think of how I couldn't even count on one hand how many good times we had that didn't involve inebriation of one sort or another.
Well, it was there to teach you something, right? And now you come out of a relationship with lessons learned that you'll take forward and do better next time, right?
That's the name of the game. Absolutely.
Is that what it is?
That's
Do you
what
find a lot of marriage is just pressure from other people who think you should be married?
Oh, that's huge. Yeah, our society, our parents, our friends, everybody wants each other to get married because we want to fit in. We're social creatures, and that's the thing. It's not the way it used to be in the old days. I mean, by the old days, humans have been around 200,000 years, and we've been getting married in the way that we understand it for about 6,000 to 10,000 years. So less than, let's say, 5% of human history have we been getting married. A very small percentage of the time humans have been around, they've been getting married. What were we doing for 95%? And you could probably argue that what we do most of the time is what you'd call normal, right? Not what you do for this little 5% of the time. That's maybe abnormal by definition. The normal thing, what humans did when they were living on the African savanna, they lived in small tribes of 150 or fewer, so that they could practice reciprocal altruism and trading favors and living together, and they shared everything, which is shelter, child rearing, food, sex. Everything was communal property, and if someone was stingy or selfish or didn't share what they had, they would be ostracized or they'd be punished. It was normal to share. And nobody knew whose baby belonged to whom because everybody was having sex with everybody, and that was natural. And women didn't have to worry about losing their husband and how am I going to protect my child if my husband dies? The whole tribe takes care of everybody, and that was natural. Now what happened 6,000 to 10,000 years ago is that humans discovered this concept of agriculture, and they started to stay in one place, plant crops, and the idea occurred of propriety. This land, this crop, these animals, this woman belongs to me. It's my property. And once you start thinking about property, the next thought is, well, how do I make sure that my property is passed on to my genetic offspring? And the way to do that, they had to come up with a way to do that because the man is out working in the fields or he's out hunting. He's not there 24/7 practicing what they call mate guarding, keeping an eye on his woman. So the way to keep an eye on her is to create this social construct called marriage, which creates a social fence around women sexually. It's to control. Marriage was created, or the idea occurred for marriage to control the sexual behavior of women. Not men as much, because if you look in the Old Testament or in religious texts, adultery is a sin that women are punished for, much more so than men, because they're the ones who get pregnant. A man can't get pregnant, obviously. A woman knows it's her baby. A man can't be sure unless he's been practicing mate guarding or put this social fence around his woman, which helps him to feel better, more secure about, well, this is actually my child. And that's where the change started. And from that point forward, what became more common was polygamy, because then some men got to be more rich than others who would have more land and more, like this, you'd have serfs and lords and then kings and sultans and the kings and sultans and pharaohs would have thousands, maybe 5,000 or more wives and concubines. And when you have one man with 5,000 women, you'd have 5,000 young men with not getting any pussy, and they are going to be really frustrated, and that's bad for society. So then they started thinking, okay, this isn't working. We're having too many wars and fights. Monogamy has to be the rule. One man, one woman. So now we practice social monogamy or serial monogamy, which is essentially polygamy, except you got to get rid of the old one if you take on a new one. And that's where we are now in this serial monogamy culture.
So polygamy is actually more to the natural order. We'd be better off if we were polygamists.
Well, that's what we used to be. That's what's more natural. Hang on, my light is on a timer. There we go.
That always seemed more natural to me.
Polygamy is where we was a transitional phase for humans for thousands of years. It's what became natural once we became farmers or stopped being hunter-gatherers and nomads, where everybody shared everything and sex wasn't a proprietary thing. But once it became proprietary, things became proprietary, the natural outcome was polygamy followed by serial monogamy.
Right. Well, we're still fighting in Canada as to whether or not it's constitutional. We've got a massive. I don't know if you know about Bountiful. It's a very large polygamous community here in BC, and they're challenging their right. And if it goes through, it'll be, precedent setting for Canada. It would be basically, if they win, then polygamy is allowed.
I think it'd be really fascinating because polygamy, when you think about it, as it stands in modern society, we think polygamy basically as one man and a harem of women. I'm looking for when that rule becomes reversed, when you have the one woman and with a few dozen guys, and finally doesn't get called a whore for it.
There have been societies where that has occurred, and usually that happens when there's a scarcity of resources. When there is an abundance of resources, it's usually one man with many wives because you can have all these babies and there's enough food and resources to take care of them. But some cultures, like the Eskimo culture, have often had situations where resources were scarce, so there'd be several men and one wife. And usually, though, in that situation, all those men are related to each other. They're brothers or something, so there's a genetic interest. They all have the same genetic interest in the baby, even if their brother was the father.
Well, that is fascinating. I have no idea.
For the most part, because I certainly don't feel the need to spread my seed that much. I have one child. I'm very happy with just the one child. Is it still commonplace for men to want to have as many children as possible and have 7 wives so they can have 100 children? Is that still something that goes through? I don't know the young mind very well. So.
It's a powerful urge to want to, as my friend calls it in the documentary, he calls it NSB, nasty sperm buildup. It has to be expressed from the body or you go insane. And that leads to children normally. But we've devised some barriers to protect or to slow down the fertilization of an egg. But that natural urge is so strong that, if our great-grandparents were really horny, or we wouldn't be here. It's innate. It's within us in order to perpetuate the species.
But,
I think there's do some thinning, personally, but, that's just me.
It's, and I've definitely found ways to solve the problem without having to spread my seed. I don't know. I've I've been pretty good at that for the last few years, to be honest.
Well, keep up the good work, because it's not like there's a shortage of people on this planet.
That's true.
That's for sure.
Gord wants to get rid of 2/3 of them. He's hoping and praying for a meteorite or asteroid to collide with the Earth. He's always disappointed when one goes by us.
Every time you hear about the near miss, I'm like, oh, so close.
And when's the next one we're waiting for? I think it's 2026. Was that
2024? Isn't it?
Is it 20?
I can't remember. I get my hopes up with each one. I get so let down.
But that's one of the ones that they said was either 30 meters or 400 meters or something in diameter. Have you noticed NASA math, Roger?
Well, that's
when
they're
talking about these asteroids that are coming at Earth, they go, well, it's either 30 meters in diameter or 400 meters in diameter. That is horrible math.
Yeah, well, either size would not be good for who's ever underneath it. And it's kind of just a matter of time, right? It's not if, but it will happen. It's happened in the past. There's an infinite number of meteors and chunks of rock out there, beyond. What is it between? Is it between Mars and Jupiter that there's a the asteroid belt that should have been a planet but never coalesced into a planet, and it's got all these chunks of rock, and one just gets a little slightly perturbed and then goes across our path, and bam, it's an extinction event.
Yeah.
And look at the smile on your face. You're so happy when you hear extinction event.
I'm just, I have to, like, I never thought, before we started this podcast, I swear I was the happiest, go luckiest in the sense I always, I love people and just doing stuff. And since really opening my eyes to society, and really what it comes down to is really just paying more attention to government than anything else, I don't think I've ever wanted the planet to stop more quickly than nowadays. I just think we've taken such a left-hand turn in life that I think a reset button is almost necessary. I mean, as Eric always says, prove me wrong, but I don't know.
I think we're going to be okay. I think, and now you've done the Trekkie documentary, which gives you kind of a glimpse into a sort of a idyllic future. You've done the religion, you've done marriage. How do you think we are as a society? Like, worldwide, are we getting better? Are we going to be okay? Are we?
Yeah, that's a great question, because you have to determine what is your yardstick for getting better. In one sense, we're learning more and more about the universe, which is fascinating. We've got, if you're a fan of the Black Keys or something, it's like, okay, we've got great new music that we wouldn't have had if they weren't born.
Sure.
But there's so many people that we're overrunning our environment, and so our environment is going to change and is changing. And the problem is we like our environment the way it is because this is what we evolved to like. The world isn't made of pillows and pillows and soft edges. It's a really rough, dangerous place for our species.
My argument has been, though, that we figured out AIDS. We've figured out nanotechnology. We've figured out amazing things in science just in the last 20 years of the 21st century. I think we'll figure out warm. I think we're going to be okay. Like it's not going to be.
Some people will be probably.
On either side of it's not as catastrophic as I think everyone wants it to be. I think Al Gore scared everybody. We never recovered from it. I don't see it. I don't see us not coming up with a plan for this.
Well, you're in a good spot there, living so far north, where it's probably going to be less harmful than it will be for somebody living in a dry area, a place that becomes a desert that used to have rain. But
and I'm on the West Coast too, so I got nothing but rain. I'm fine.
Yeah, you're in a good spot. Gord's going to like this. Here's my pessimistic view. Here's the problem. Because we become an interconnected world now, and the internet has connected everybody and every business and all of our infrastructure and our power grids, everything's connected. All it would take is an electromagnetic pulse to shut down the electric grid, which would then cause a domino effect. And you know what I see you nodding, you know what an EMP does.
Absolutely.
And so let's say somebody detonated a warhead in the stratosphere, and a line of sight, everything burns out, all your cars stop, all your electricity stops. Without electricity, 90% of the people in that area will starve within 7 or 8 months, certainly within a year. And here's the even worse part. Within that area, and if it's worldwide, there is somewhere approaching 400, 300 and some nuclear power plants that their batteries will run, or most of them will be, because they're storing all their spent nuclear fuel rods on the premises in a water bath, and that water has to continue circulating. If it doesn't, because they run out of power and battery, like Fukushima did, the reason Fukushima melted down is because their batteries wore down. If you have that happening 300 times around the world, that's an extinction event. So that's something for you to look forward to, Gord.
Oh, when I don't know if I doubt you had a chance to hear about this one, but here in Southern Ontario, we actually had a warning that came across our cell phones that